Well, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. We've got folks joining us from all across the continent today. My name is Jesse Hildebrand. I'm here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And if you're joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, you're catching us on a really exciting day for a number of reasons. Number one, today really epitomizes what we do best. We started off the day live in the Galapagos with Joe on the docks with amazing sea lions. I just wrapped up with Parks Canada in our first ever Inuktitut broadcast, so that was really exciting. That's on our YouTube channel. And most of all, for today's purposes, we are starting off a whole new series. Now, we've been partnering with the amazing folks at Environment and Climate Change Canada for a bevy of our Changing Planet series all year long. We've been featuring some of the coolest careers at Environment and Climate Change Canada. We've featured things from polar to biodiversity to culture to making clean air and water, the huge diversity of jobs that you can have with them. And you know what? We had so much fun the first two times that we had to come back. And so today begins a 4-part epic mini series in conjunction with some really, really cool scientists. And we are kicking it off in style with frogs hopping into the unknown. So we are going to learn from David a little bit about the amazing work that he's done to understand and share the wide world of frogs with you. We're going to learn about these incredible creatures, some of the threats facing them, and what we can do to help. So classes, have your hands at the ready to come back in. We're going to have some questions for you as an audience as well. And of course, a big long Q&A at the end as always. So without further ado, David, thank you so much for joining us for the first time ever today. Welcome to the broadcast, and take us away with your epic frog backdrop there.
Hello, Jesse, and hello, everyone on the channel. How is everybody doing in the classes?
So good, so good. Mr. Dunn's class, yes, good.
Yes!
Amazing, amazing.
So today I'm going to talk to you about amphibians, and for one good reason. This is Amphibian Week. Always the first week of May, we celebrate all the amphibians from the world. So my first question to you, of different ages, can you tell me what's an amphibian?
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to be bringing in live classes throughout this. YouTubers, I want you to chime in as well. Miss Cazzola, if you guys want to unmute your microphones, 4-5s, we'll be able to come to you as well. But Mr. Dunn's class, what is an amphibian? Do we know?
What do you think, guys? What is an amphibian? We talked a little bit about it. Lucas, what do you think?
Amphibian
Nice and loud.
An amphibian is.
Okay. Anyone else? What do you think, Bihan?
I think an amphibian is a warm-blooded animal.
You think it's a warm-blooded animal?
Warm-blooded animals.
Grayson?
I think an amphibian is a cold-blooded animal.
Oh, ooh, we've got contrasting, we've got battling students on what kind of blood the animals have. Very cool. Miss Cazzola's class, we can come to you guys too for a quick second. We will come back to all our classes for more. What do we think, 4-5s? Hey.
Elliot, go ahead.
Elliot?
I think that an amphibian is an animal that can live in water and on land.
Live in water and on land. We've got a whole bunch of answers here, David. Can you tell us a little more? These are great.
That's really good. I'm going to start with Elliot because amphibian, like many species, many groups, are named after Greek words. And the word amphibios in Greek means double life. These are animals that have 2 lives, one on land, one on water, just like Elliot said. But we also learn that these are cold-blooded animals. So their blood is always at the temperature of the environment. If it's warm, it goes up. If it's cool, it goes down. So they always have to seek for the perfect environment for their blood to stay at the right temperatures. They have also cool things. They are vertebrate, like us, like the fish, like the birds and the reptiles. So they are called vertebrates. They have a backbone. But one thing that's pretty cool compared to the other vertebrates is that they still have to lay their eggs on land. Like these little frogs in the tree, she's laid her eggs all on a leaf. You can see it on the picture. All the amphibians, they don't have their eggs inside their body like us mammals or other species. They do put their eggs outside. So that makes them one special trait of amphibians. Now I'm going to give you a couple of examples of cool amphibians out there. First, the one you know are frogs. Here's a great tree frog we find all over North America with a really nice sack when he's calling. That's a male. He's calling for girlfriends. So tree frogs, all the frogs, these are part of the amphibians. We also have the toad. That's a toad that we find only on the east part of North America and a tiny, tiny population in the south of Ontario in Canada. Really endangered in Canada, pretty common on the east side of the USA. And I'll come back later of what makes those species special when it comes to conservation. So frogs, toads, what else? We have the salamanders. Look at that one. He has a special nose called the cow knob salamanders. It's found just in the United States. So salamanders, and then we have newts, very common. The red-spotted newt, you can find it. It is a name that's called for itself, with all these spot on the back. Easy to find in the forest floor. You find it all over the United States, and I'm sure you've seen it certainly if you went in the walk in the forest with your parents. What about those guys? Sicilian. I've never seen one. And you know why? Because those amphibians only live underground. They are not worms. They are not eels. They are amphibians. They have the same traits as the others. They have their backbone. They lay their eggs outside of their body, but they live underground. Very rare to find. There is none in Canada, none in the US. They only live in tropical countries, and they're a very tiny group. We don't know much about them. That's because they are so rare to find. So now, back to you. Oh, is that an amphibian?
Ooh, what do we think? Miss Gazzola's class, I'm going to come to you first this time. 4-5. If you want to unmute your mic again, you can leave your mic unmuted, by the way. Let's see what you think. Amphibian or no?
Reckon. It's not an amphibian because I see it has scale.
Scales. That's a pretty solid answer. We'll stick with that. David.
That's absolutely right. Reptiles here. We have a reptile with a very hard skin, as opposed to the amphibians. It's a very smooth skin. Even the toad that we saw before has a very rugged skin, but quite different from a reptile. It doesn't have scale. It just has warts on the back. What makes that special for a toad is that it can spend more time on land than the frogs. So even so, all of them needs the water. They always go back and forth between the water and the land. The toad, with his couple of watts, it can go further land. There's toads that can travel up to 2 or 3 kilometers in a day without going back to the water. So those guys can go further. Now, a couple of more questions for you. How old does a frog can live? Well, this one is the oldest frog we've ever found. He lives on what's called Maud Island. It's a small island near New Zealand, and people have registered up to 13 years old. So that's why they named Gollum. That's the oldest frog on the planet. Typical frogs in nature, they live maybe 5, maybe 6 years old. Sometime in captivity in the zoo, we have frogs that live about 15 years old, some species, but it's really rare to have them as far as 37. We still don't know what that one species of frog, lives at 37 years old. Not only it's old, but across all his life, he only moved on what we call a home range, so an area of the land that's only 30 square meters. That would be 300 square foot. That's like smaller than your house, I imagine. So a very small area, he's going to spend all his life on this small area, capturing crickets, flies, finding mates, making babies, all in that one tiny spot in one island of the archipelago near New Zealand. So very special frog. All right, what's my next question for you? What do frog eat? Any answer? Any options?
That thing in the mouth is really freaky, whatever that is. Mr. Dunn's class, grade 4. We're going to come to you first. Hey, guys.
Sadwick, what do you think?
I think
What do you think they eat?
they eat insects.
Insects?
Okay. Con?
Other frogs. Dang it.
Other frogs?
Other frogs? One more.
Some do. Some absolutely do.
All right. Jaden at the back. Insects as well? Oh, yeah, that was said there. Okay, Summer?
Mosquitoes, insects, other frogs. These are great. I know we could go all day, guys. We're going to turn it back to David. What do they eat?
I have a lot of frog specialists in the room. They do eat insects. They do eat little worms, flies, insect. We have bigger frogs. There is a cane toad in Australia. We have a bullfrog in North America. They can eat little frogs, but typically they stick to insects. The bottom line is they are carnivores. They eat meat. What makes the difference with the tadpole is that the tadpoles, they are vegetarians. So tadpoles only eat vegetation in the pond. They eat all the leaves, the reefs that they find. So I find that's why I go back to what I said earlier. These are two-sided animals. It's a creature that start as a vegetarian and become a carnivorous. Us, lots of us started as carnivores and become vegetarian later for choices. These do the opposite. They start by eating vegetation in the pond, and as they come out on the land, they're going to start eating meat and only meat. So they really change their digestive system to be able to digest only plant material and then digest only meat material. And you know what's the only thing that changed with amphibians? The way they breathe. So when they are in the pond, when they are tadpoles, they have no legs, they just have the tail, they swim all day long looking for vegetation to eat. They breathe with gills, just like fish. They are born capturing the oxygen in the water with their gills. Then the metamorphosis, they become frogs, they go outside on the land, they start eating meat, and they start breathing with lungs, just like you and I. They capture the oxygen from the atmosphere with their lungs. So it's like a superhero that totally transformed from an aquatic form to a terrestrial form and change the way they eat, the way they breathe. Everything changes in a matter of like a couple of days from transforming from a tadpole to a frogs. One thing they keep also that's pretty special power, they also bring through their skin. So they can capture a good portion of oxygen through their skin, both when they are in the water and when they are in land in a pretty moist environment, which is why they need to keep their skin always wet to be able to capture that oxygen through their skin. So now you know a bit more about frogs. I see there's a lot of experts that know a lot of the biology of the frogs, but what you may not know is that the frogs are in trouble. They are really going through difficult time on our planet today. For one, since I was born, since some of your teachers were born, we've lost 200 amphibian species in the world. 200. That's frogs we'll never see again. They were there before, they were thriving, and over the last 40 to 50 years, they've gone, disappeared from all part of the world. We'll never see them again. If I put that on the size of all species, there is 4,000 plus species of amphibians in the world. More than almost half of them, 2,000 of them are threatened with extinctions. So no matter if you are in North America, in Africa, in Europe, Australia, everywhere there are amphibians that are almost going to go extinct. And pretty much half of the species are possibly going to go extinct in the next 100 years if we don't do something to save them. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what's happening to them. For one, we are changing their habitat. Sea frogs, they always, even when they're adults, they go back to the pond to lay their eggs. You can see there is in the middle here a clutch, what we call a clutch of eggs that have been laid by a couple of frogs. But as you know, we change our environment a lot. We change our farming practices. We make lots of crops, lots of land is changed. We destroy the ponds. We build more and more and more and more roads all the time, destroying ponds. So as these change these habitats, those frogs have nowhere to go spawning. I've seen frogs, they go back to the same place all over again. And even if there is roads, I've seen female frogs laying their eggs on the roads because the year before, there was water there. And now there's no water anymore. And those eggs are going to dry. They're never going to become tadpoles and froglets. And so this is one of the main problems for species of frogs all over the world is that their habitat is getting destroyed and disappearing. Next problem, pollution. There's pollution in the air from factories, from industry. Lots of it is bad chemicals that are falling back on the land. You can put the tallest chimney in that you want. Where I am in Sudbury, Canada, we have a chimney that's 150 meters tall. It used to be one of the tallest buildings just to bring smoke somewhere else. But that smoke, you know what? Still going to fall somewhere. It's going to still fall in the water. It's going to pollute the water. In fact, there is pesticides that we use still in the USA, not so much in Canada anymore, but in the USA, we can still put a pesticide called atrazine. And there's been studies showing that these pesticides, when it's applied a lot in the environment and in the water, remember, those animals, they breathe through their skin. So they absorb everything that's in the water. When they absorb atrazine, that pesticide turns male frogs into female frogs. So what's happening? Well, we have ponds where everybody's a female. So no dad, no males, no babies. Those population are going to go extinct because they're never going to see males again. So just by applying a pesticide, we change the number of males and females in the population, turn the male to 0, and those population is going to go extinct. So that all those pesticides are a very serious problem for the health of the frogs. Third problem I'm going to bring here, which is more natural. There's not much we can do except trying to preserve the habitat, not move frogs around, is disease. There is one particular fungus that I've been working on for the last 15 years, and that fungus is found everywhere, particularly in altitude, and it's killing frogs. Here it's in the Sierra Nevada, and where it was first discovered about 15 years ago. And it's someone that was walking around on a hike and saw all those frogs upside down, dead. And by bringing it to a scientist, they found out that there was that fungus that's killing them everywhere. So the combination of change of habitat, pollution, and disease is what's really driving those species of frogs everywhere. So why should we save the frogs? Can I have a couple of answers? I mean, they're cute, but is there other reason we should save the frogs?
Ooh, we're going to head to both our live classes. YouTubers, again, don't be shy, but Miss Cazzola's class, why save the frogs?
Joel.
You're saying.
We need to save the frogs because frogs actually eat mosquitoes, and mosquitoes are actually responsible for lots of deaths. And mosquitoes carry lots of diseases. And frogs
Fantastic answer, man. Mr. Dunn's class, you guys have any thoughts too? Why save the frogs?
What do you think, Neiman?
I think we should save the frogs because they eat the insects that harm some people.
Yeah. It's the same answer for both our groups, David. If you want to share more of why we should save the frogs, but that's a good lead-in. Perfect.
Well, it's an excellent lead. I think you should recruit your next expert in those classes. They know already a lot about frogs. So yes, first thing is that frogs eat ticks, flies, mosquitoes. Those animals, those insects, they carry disease. One of them is malaria, but they also eat pests. So a lot of places where people grow crops, if there was no frogs, those crops would have serious troubles growing and being flourishing and feeding populations because of the all those insects that are eating the crops. But frogs are able to control those population of insects, maintain them low, and therefore crops can grow. And also we don't have those diseases. In fact, I met someone one day, he had a small garden in his backyard, and he built a pond on one side of the garden. And every spring, he would catch a couple of frogs, bring them on the other side of the garden, and as they move back to the pond, they would eat all the insects through his salad, his tomatoes, his potatoes. He had the best garden ever. No pesticides, nothing to do, just bring a couple of frogs on the other side of the garden, let them travel back all the way to their ponds, and they eat all the bad insects through their crops. This is the best way to do gardening. Use frogs. So frogs eat insects, but there's also a lot of species that depend on frogs to survive. Frogs are food for birds, for fish, snakes, lizards. Even in tropical countries, we have monkeys that eat the frogs. They are in the pond, the beetles and the dragonflies. They survive on tadpoles. So that's a key element of the food chains, not only of what they eat, but what's eating them. So if we remove all those amphibians, if they disappear from the planet, we're going to have a lot of species that are going to be in trouble. Species we like birds and fish and monkeys, they're going to be in trouble not finding their food. But I think what's important is that frogs have been around for 250 million years. This is the first group of animals that came off the water. There was way before the dinosaurs, there was only water on the planet. There was fish everywhere. And then suddenly when it started, the water come too low to go down, the first fish to come out of the water was a frog. It was an ancestor of the amphibians. So they have been around. They have been the first one to colonize the land we can find them today on every continent except Antarctica, but we find them everywhere because they were the first one to come on the land 250 million years. They have survived all the trouble of the planet for 250 million years. So I think it's pretty damn good that we give them a good shootout and we try to save them for maybe another 50 million years ahead of us. That's, I think, a really important reason to keep them. And as I said earlier, frogs are pretty cool. I think that to me, that's a really good reason to try to save them so that our children and grandchildren can see those cool species no matter where we go, no matter where ecosystem we go, a wetland, a forest, in the mountains, everywhere we can find frogs. It'd be cool to see them for many, many years ahead. So last question for you for today. Do you know where are poison dart frogs from? I just thought I would put a cool frogs at the end.
They are a super cool frog. They're my favorite group of frogs. I'm so glad you did. I'm Mr. Dunstad. I'm going to head you guys first. Poison dart frogs. Where do we think they're from?
John, where do you think they're from?
They're probably from
Amazon
they need
rainforest?
that because they need that rain. There's a lot of water there, so that could be the perfect habitat for them.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah.
Felix?
Tropical rainforests around Central America.
Okay.
Great answers, guys. David, they're all, like, again, we will have to have them as the experts next time, I think.
I totally, like, they know everything. They know, like, they've prepared that topic so well. So yes, poison dart frogs are in Central America, also South America. They're pretty cool because, yes, they have bright colors, but they also live in the trees. Many of them can go up to like 30, 40, 50 meters up in a tree, and they drop their eggs. They don't lay many eggs, maybe 2, 3, 5 per female, and they drop their eggs in what's called a bromeliad. So it's those type of flowers you see up in the tree. They're not necessarily from that specific tree, but they grow on the bark of trees like orchids, and they open their flowers and their leaves, and it makes like a little pool, the bromeliads. So if they retain the water from those rainforests, and the frog can aim to drop those eggs right in the bromeliad where there's enough water, makes a little pool. The eggs is going to become a tadpole. It's going to feed on a couple of flies that found maybe in that bromeliad, and eventually, when it's going to be ready to be a frog, it's going to jump the last 10 meters and drop on the floor in another pool and start his adult life as a frog. So a really cool frog that starts up in the trees and then goes on the land. And do you know why they got their name of poison dart frogs? Because all the people that live with them for centuries have realized that their skin is really toxic. So what they did is they captured those frogs and they rubbed their arrows, called darts as well. They rubbed their arrows on the skin. So when they shoot birds, their birds died immediately from the poison of those frogs. So they give them their names. Their whole family name is called Dendrobatidae. It's a bit complicated. That's the whole family of those frogs. There's many of them, but they all have different toxins on different frogs. But the native of South and Central America have used those frogs for hunting to improve the chance of killing birds when they shoot them with arrows. And so therefore the name poison dart frogs. So as I say, it's up to you to save the frogs. I think you're the next generation, grade 4 or 5. You start making some good decisions about what to do in life. You can convince your parents about making good choices. One thing you can do is never buy wild-caught amphibians as pets. One of the problems I didn't mention earlier is a lot of them are so pretty, they end up in the pet trade. People go and collect them in the forest in many numbers. They sell them for a lot of money, and then you don't find them in nature anymore. There's lots of those cool frogs that even that yellow salamander is in Europe, not a tropical forest, but it's pretty cool salamanders, and it's declining a lot because people are going to capture them and put them in a tank and sell them for a lot of money. Lots of them are poison dart frogs, but there's also the red-eyed tree frogs at the bottom that's in decline as well because of the pet trade of people that are capturing them and trying to sell them. So never buy animals that have been wild caught. If they have been brought in captivity and breed in captivity, that's a different story. But if they are caught in the wild, they should never be purchased. They only should stay in the wild. And second things, which I told you earlier, is stop using pesticides. If your parents are using pesticides, tell them to change their practices. There's a lot of organic product you can use. Just even a bit of water and soap kill most of the insect on your parents' gardens and flowers. So if you can convince your parents to not use pesticide, there will be a huge progress for amphibians all over the world, because those chemicals are not going to end up in the water. And because I started by saying it was Amphibian Week, I found there is actually a contest in the United States organized by an organization that I'm working with called the Amphibians and Reptile Partners in Amphibians and Reptile Conservation, PARC for short. And I can send you back the web link after. And that organization, for the coming week, they have a drawing contest. These are pictures from last year of students of your age. It goes from 1 to 12. Students that have won the contest was by sending pictures of their favorite frog drawings. And so if you want to tell everyone about frogs, if you want a picture of frogs, you can send them to this website, and maybe some of you are going to win about frogs. And hopefully they can still sleep in good peace for many, many more years with your help.
David, there's no better message to wrap up a program than that as we dive in with our Q&A. I'm going to make sure all our classes have that link. So if you guys want to participate, we'd love to absolutely not only have you involved, but share what you do with us. We'd love to hear from you. That would be spectacular. David, if you want to come out of screen share so you can see us again, have a bit of a conversation, we're going to dive in with our Q&A. YouTubers, feel free to start sharing in the chat. We'd love to hear from you as well. Again, classes all the way across North America today, which is really exciting to kick off our Changing Planet 3 series. But we're going to begin in Sudbury, grade 4, Mr. Dunn's class. If you guys want to kick us off with the Q&A, you are good to go. Hey.
Yes, Maddie, go ahead.
Why do frogs get a bubble after
Could you
You missed the sound. You turn your stay facing the microphone. Why do frogs?
Why do they get a bubble in their throat?
Oh, so because their throat is sometime underwater, sometime overwater, it acts like a drum. You know, when you bang a drum, sometimes you see it inflating, or a speaker, the speaker of your parents' stereo system, you can see it vibrates a little bit. This way, they can concentrate the air, and then when it decreases, the sound goes out super loud of their mouth. So some species do it one by one in different part of the pond, and they respond to each other. Some of them do a choir, so they all in tune, blow up their throat, get some air, and when that air deflates, it makes that sound that you can hear miles away for the frogs to find each other during usually mating seasons. When they want to find a mate, that's when they start really using their throat. And for some of them, it's quite impressive. Some others, you don't see it as well, but those tree frogs are the one you can see go at night just after sunset with some headlamps, and you see many of those frogs popping up their throat as they start calling.
We are just waiting for our frogs here. Newfoundland's a little bit of a delayed spring compared to our friends in Ontario, but in a few weeks, we should be having our frogs trilling in our local wetland, which is really exciting. One of my favorite things all season long. So thank you for that call. And we're going to head to Mr. Zoll's class in Guelph. 4-5s, come on in. Hey. Oh, there we are. Hi.
I want to know why frogs like skin is so textured.
Ooh.
So remember, there is two really type of skins. You have your frogs that have a very shiny, very wet skins. It protects them from drying. That's why they don't go too far from the ponds. They try to, either they go in wet grasses or they come out of rain. I'm going to take a group of students tonight to try to find some of those frogs. We just had rain all day, so it should be perfect. They keep that because it protects them from whatever is in the air. It keeps them also able to breathe from the air. And so they have always that shiny wet. And then you have your toads. Your toads have warts. Some of those warts have a little bit of chemicals in it to protect them from predators. So if birds try to peck at them, they're going to get a really bad taste, and they're not going to do it again. And so those toads have a more sort of rugged, textured skins. And also, because it's a bit thicker, it can keep the moisture inside. So instead of having to have their skin always wet, they can keep more moisture inside, and they can travel further on land. So you get the really two different type of skins, toads and frogs. And then all the salamanders and newts, it's a very wet skin as well.
Yeah, great question, guys. And I can see we already have lined up some kids and bulls. So we're
I
going to
saw
take as
that.
many as we can over the next 10 minutes or so. Mr. Dunn's class, back to you guys. Hey.
Ethan has a question.
How many different types of frogs and toads are there in the world?
Ooh, no pressure.
Yes. So the number of species. So species is they can breed together, they can make babies together, like two cats together or two dogs together. But dogs and cats don't make babies together. So if we look at all the species, we have about 4,500 species of amphibians in general. So remember that includes your newts, your salamanders, your frogs, your toads, and the one underground. 4,500. Inside of this, there's about 30 to 40 families. So these are your tree frogs, several species of tree frogs. You get your toads. There is the spade-foot toads. They have like a spade. Really, they have like their hand are like spade, and they can like move into the sand. So there's about 30 or 40 types of frogs, and each of them are many, many species.
My tech just doesn't want to work. I keep pressing the button. There we are. We're back. We get questions like that all the time, and to have such a ready answer for a species group is quite amazing. So thank you for that, David, because that's a kind of query that usually goes by the wayside with our speakers. Ms. Gazzola's group, come on in. And YouTubers, don't be shy. We know you're there, so please do feel free to chime in. But Guelph, it's back to you. Hey.
If a poison dart frog touches a log and you touch where it touches, does it poison your skin?
Interesting question.
That is a really good question. Typically, those poisons they can be very active on the frog itself. So if you touch a frog, and it's true for lots of animals, lots of frogs, if you touch them, wash your hand. Just for safe, wash your hand right after. It could be very dangerous for like a baby, someone that's very small that has sort of their immune system is not quite ready, or someone that's very old whose immune system might be sort of aging and they could react badly to this poison. But someone like in the middle age, they should not be troubled by poison. Now, when it comes to poison dart frogs, their poison is very, very dangerous. Like even if you're an adult in very good shape, you should not touch those frog with your hands. Put some gloves. Now, if it goes on a tree, that poison is going to degrade relatively quickly because the molecules are going to dry out. So it depends if you touch right after the frog has hopped on the tree and you touch it and maybe lick your fingers, not a good idea. If you touch the same tree a couple of hours after or the next day, then that chemical is gone and it's not poisonous for you.
I want to stress, if anything's in a tree, try not to just touch after anything and lick your fingers. It's probably a weird thing to do. But especially so with our poison dart frogs. We've never had that question before. Thanks, buddy. That was great. Mr. Dunn's group, coming back to you. Take us away.
Okay, Haven has a question.
How long does it take for tadpoles to grow into a frog?
Oh, that's a really good question. There's again, I didn't have too much time, but there's a lot of different metamorphosis processes. The most classical one, they would stay 2 to 3 weeks in the water. They start very tiny, maybe 3 to 4 millimeters when they come out of the eggs, and they're just going to eat, and grow. And they'll finish, maybe a little frog might be about 2 or 3 centimeters, maybe, closer to 2 centimeters when they come out of the water. So that length may take about 2 to 3 weeks in time, depending on how much food they find. And you'll see, if you find tadpoles, I really recommend, it's a really good thing to do for teachers. Go now, get some eggs and put them in a tank, or find tadpoles if you are too late. And you'll see those tadpoles, they develop one leg in the back, then the second leg in the back, and they start swimming faster with their back legs. Then they get a front leg and another front legs. And then when they're ready to metamorphose, when their gills are going to disappear and they're going to become lungs inside, their tail is going to shorten and shorten and shorten, and they're going to come out on land. That's when your tank, you need to put one stone, just one stone that has half in the water, half in the air, so they can go on land and start breathing air. Because you know what? Frogs can drown. if they can't go on land, if there's no way for them, if they can't swim all day, they'll just get too tired, too exhausted, and die. That's how surprising it is, because they have lungs and they can't just stay on the surface and breathe all the time. They have to rest as well. So when those tadpoles come out of little frogs, that's where you need to put a stone or something, platform for them to rest. But usually that process takes about 2 or 3 weeks for most of the species. Now, there's one species I really like. It's only in France, where I grew up and I studied it. It's called the midwife toad. So it's called the midwife toad because the male, when the female has laid the eggs and they've been fertilized, the male grabs the eggs and put them on its back. And he can carry, it's a toad, so he goes on land more than the frogs. So he carries those eggs on his back, and every day at night, he goes back to the pond, put his back in the water so the eggs become moist again, and he's carrying after those eggs for about 40 days, and then he knows exactly the day they're going to come out of those eggs. And he goes back to the pond, and he stays all night in the pond, and those eggs, those tadpoles, come out of the eggs on his back and start swimming in the pond. But for 40 days, he goes back and forth every day. He goes inland to feed, gets his meal, come back at night, wet the eggs, and he has about 100 to 150 eggs on his back. So you see one of those midwife toads in France in the spring. They are hopping on the sand with a little clutch of eggs right on their back as they move. But they always try to go back to the water to keep those eggs pretty moist.
I'm trying to pull up a picture here of a midwife toad, which I'll bring in between our next Q&A. We've got a few more minutes left. Time flies and you're having fun. And I want to note, if you have any additional questions about frogs, toads, any amphibians, share them with us at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. We will track down the answers for you, so please do feel free if we don't get your answer live today. But Miss Gazola's class, we're coming back to you live for now. Come on in. Hey.
My question is, how are poison dart frogs' skin poisonous?
Ooh, why are they poisonous to begin with?
So all animals, what they have to fight for in the wild is not to be eaten. There's prey and there's predators. So those frogs, they've developed a defense mechanism. Some animals have like claws or spines or something to defend themselves. Those frogs, they're pretty harmless, really. They would not resist any type of physical fight. So instead, they've developed those molecules, chemical molecules that are on their skin and that protects them. How it does protect them? It doesn't protect one individual, because if he gets eaten by a snake, it's not going to survive. But the snake is going to be either dying or very, very sick and learn to never eat that frog again, looking at the colors. So if he sees a color, it's super bright, he's like, oh, that's going to be a good meal. It's like, some of them are called actually strawberry poison dart frogs because they're red and black. But if he's eaten once, either his body is going to see him dying, it's like, I'm not touching those frogs again. Or if he survives itself, he's going to probably never try to eat those strawberry poison dart frogs. So it's a mechanism that doesn't necessarily help one individual, but it helps the whole species. And so the whole species has developed that those molecules and those chemicals through evolutions of times. And so now they have, all of them have those poison on the skin that all the predators have learned not to touch, just to look, it's pretty, don't touch, don't eat me.
Yeah. There's a great example sort of closer to home for our Ontario classes, especially. You'll know skunks and you'll know wasp and bees. So sort of that white and black or yellow and black banding is pretty much a universal thing to all animals, to be like, leave it alone. It's venomous or it's poisonous. It's going to do something that's really going to negatively impact me. So most animals know to leave those creatures alone. A lot of creatures that have poison that if they're eaten, they're going to really harm or kill an animal that's eating them, will have some sort of coloration to sort of outwardly advertise that. And I'm really glad we got that question today. That's fantastic, guys. I'm going to bring up a picture of the midwife toad because it's so cool and everyone ought to have a chance to see it. So here's our midwife toad friend with the eggs on the back. What a cool creature that is. What a magnificent animal. Very, very neat. Thanks, David. Guys, time flies and you're having fun. We are going to take just one more question, but if you have more, get your teachers to write them down, message them to us after the broadcast. We'll take as many as we can when we're done. But Mr. Dunn, come on back in and wrap us up. Hey.
All right, Vihan has a question here.
Why do some frogs have really good grit?
Ooh.
Really good grip. Couple of reasons. They use their hands like you and I. So we've developed a thumb that's super useful. They don't really have a thumb, like their hands are pretty much every finger is kind of the same. Some species have a bigger one, but they use it for a few reasons. They need to catch their prey. Some of them have a very, I've seen those pictures of those like tongue that expand to catch a fly. It's a kind of a cliche. Tree frogs are like that, but not all frogs have a very long, sticky tongue. So a lot of them use their hand to grab a fly or a worm that they can eat. So they need those very good claws. Some of them also goes, as I said, up in the trees. You find your tree frogs sometime up in your gutters. They like to spend the winter in barbecues for some reason. So they have sticky pads. So those things are not quite claws, but they are sticky pads that helps them just move along the walls like glue, like Spider-Man. So that's a different type of adaptation to moving. But they also need to grab females when they are matings. So they have those thumbs that become a bit larger, and they can just embrace the female when it's the mating season to make babies. So that's overall why they have those hands that are quite powerful. And as you saw exactly on the picture of the midwife toads, his forearm are pretty big. Like I'm sure it would be really good at arm wrestling.
David, this has been so much fun, man. Thank you so much for kicking off our epic Art Changing Planet 3 series. It's been more pleasure than you know. We've got 3 more to come every single day at noon over the next 3 days. So if you want to check out some of David's amazing colleagues at Environment and Climate Change Canada, head there, register. We'd love to have you join. This one will be on our YouTube channel, so you can catch it anytime you're keen. Before we wrap up, is there any final message you want to share with us about frog and frog conservation today?
I'm hoping I gave you a good idea of the wonderful world of frogs out there. Very diverse. I love them because, as I say, if it was not for them come out of the water a million years ago, we would not be there as mammals. We've evolved from frogs. And I hope we can see frogs again. I think it's fantastic to just go in the forest, hear them in the spring. It's loud. It's so happy. And then they bring so much joy with all their colors and the different styles. So that I'm hoping we can steal them for many generations, and then you can play a role in that, in preserving them. And either you become a scientist or you work in a park, national parks, or whatever you do. Maybe you can work in the pet shops and make sure that the frogs you have in your pet shops are not caught in the wild. Whatever you do, I think you try to keep remembering those frogs, and you can play a role to protect them.
David, there's no better method than that to wrap up our broadcast. Classes, please do email us with more questions if you have any more. But for now, we're going to wrap up, bring in our live groups to say thank you and farewell. So Mr. Dunn's grade 4, Mr. Zola's grade 4-5. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now, guys.